My guest is the former governor of the state of Wisconsin, but he's not here to talk about politics. He and his wife, his childhood sweetheart, were married for 62 years when she died of Alzheimer's, and he has written a memoir about the experience. My guest is Governor Martin Schreiber, and he'll be here with us in just a moment to share some very important information. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Page One, the award-winning show for writers with the reader in mind.
That draws the reader along, just like fiction.
Here's your host and producer, Zita Christian.
Hi, I'm Zita Christian, and my guest is Martin Schreiber, Marty, for all of us today. Marty, thank you so very, very much for being a guest on the show.
Zita, thank you. My honor to be with you. And just so you know, you've got to take great comfort in what you are doing to help people on this journey of Alzheimer's and dementia. Truly, you have made a difference and continue to make a difference in people's lives.
Marty, thank you. I've always believed in the power of story, and I believe that those of us who have the story to tell, the story of caregiving, the real lived experience, we need to value our stories. And for those of us who have a platform of whatever kind, I think that means that we also have a responsibility to share the stories, because there are a lot of people out there like you and like me who have survived the caregiving journey, but there are a lot of other people in that same situation who do not. So I'm very, very glad, for personal and professional reasons and for cosmic reasons, that you're with me here today. I have some specific questions about the book and a little bit about the writing as well, because this is page one, and a lot of the people who watch the show are writers, and so they're very curious about that process too. So I understand that to help caregivers get it right, meaning, to do a good job and to be able to survive, you divided your book into three sections about learning, coping, and surviving. In fact, there was a quote in your book that I'm hoping you'll elaborate on. You said, "None of the books I read conveyed the ugly truth about caregiving, that it can destroy you, even kill you, if you go about it wrong." Could you talk about that for me?
Zita, thank you. One of the main reasons I wrote the book is because I realized on this journey all of the things that I was doing wrong. And one of the things that I never really understood was how much of a lifeline I was to my wife. And being a lifeline to my wife, Elaine, I neglected to understand the importance of keeping myself healthy. And so during this journey, which was almost 20 years, I had significant health problems. Not only that, I got involved in, I call it alcohol, the caregiver's poison. And actually, had it not been for an intervention of my children sitting me down and say, "Dad, you're going to be dead before Mom if you don't take care of yourself," all of those things combined to have me understand that we've got to share with caregivers and understanding. These statistics, they just blew my mind. 40% of caregivers die before their loved one due to stress-related illness. If you are a caregiver, your death rate is 60% higher than that of non-caregivers. And so if we can understand that and face up to, and I think that's one of the things we caregivers have to do, is face up to an understanding of the great challenge that it is. It's not only the anxiety and the frustration and the despair, but it's also the grieving. And unless we can bring all of those together, it creates such a monumental amount of weight on our back that it ceases our ability to deal with the challenge of caregiving.
Sure does. So I want to focus specifically on one of those statistics that, you were just referring to. And one of the reasons I so appreciated your book is you have statistics in there. And even for someone who, uh, for those who like might glaze over on the numbers, when you look at the numbers related to caregiving for, especially for someone with dementia, you have to pay attention. I mean, your survival depends on it. So one in particular, you cited a study from 2015 that shows that between 60 and 80% of all dementia cases are caused by Alzheimer's. And here's the kicker, that only about 45% of those people were ever told that they had Alzheimer's. So for a disease that is so unrelenting, irreversible, and fatal, why do you think some people are not told what the diagnosis is? And talk to me about the benefits of knowing, because I wonder, is it is the problem lying with doctors who are not willing to convey the information, or is the problem with family members who don't want to actually tell the person because maybe they don't get the diagnosis until the person is well into the disease and isn't going to remember? What is all of that energy around not telling the diagnosis?
Well, the answer is yes, yes, to the points that you raised. If there's one thing in my judgment worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease. And ignorance of the disease by the medical profession, who doesn't understand when there is a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, there are two patients, the person who is ill and the caregiver. And it would be my hope that the medical profession would begin to understand that. And so hopefully those statistics that I cited are being changed. And hopefully more doctors are becoming aware of what a caregiver is going to be facing. But then you get to the next part, and you and I probably have seen much, much too much of this than we ever thought we would see. But that is, many times people just refuse to acknowledge what their loved one is going through. We get to the point where we want to keep that person in our own world. And by wanting to keep that person, our loved one, in our own world, we deny what is going on. And the tragedy in that is that we're not facing up to it, and our health is going to be impacted. Plus Zita, before I went to print, I find a series of notes and journals that Elaine had been keeping since her diagnosis. And I want you to know that we had prayed together and we had cried together, but never did I understand how much she depended upon me as her lifeline. And also, never did I understand the courage that it takes to be diagnosed. And so let's just take a situation where a person is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. You're not really aware of other things going on around about you because you have dementia. And so what happens is you're worried about what the future is. And then I said, no, Elaine, it didn't happen on a Thursday. It happened on a Friday. No, Elaine, it wasn't the Smiths. It was the Joneses. Elaine, I told you 15 times you're leaving at 10 o'clock. Why do you have to put the car keys in the dishwasher? And none of these she ever remembered saying or doing. And so here she is trying to fight to deal with her diagnosis as it is, but then being criticized for almost everything that she says or does. And how much dispiriting is that? It can't get any worse than that, to be diagnosed with this illness and then have your loved one continuously criticize and continuously try and tell you how wrong you are. And so we've got to better understand this disease, and we've got to come to the point where people have to let go of this person who once was. We've got to get to the point where whoever this person is now, that's who we have to embrace. And so going back to the statistic about people not wanting to admit it or being told about it and so forth, I don't think it's fair. It's not right. That diagnosis should be there so people can plan their bucket list. They can plan on how best they can navigate this with loved ones, with grandchildren, and so on. Yes.
When you think about all of that, because I remember going through the same thing, and let me just say, in hindsight, you know, the benefit of 2020 vision, I think back to when my husband died, and that was in July of 2022. I spent that first 6 months in what I would call react. I I was a zombie. I just went through the motions of filing paperwork and doing things I had to do. And then for the next 6 months or so, I talk about that phase as I realized. And that was when the reality hit me that I am alone and he's not coming back. And this is not the old Dallas nighttime soap opera and it was all a dream. This is real and life has changed irrevocably. And then from that point on to where I am now, I call this phase reflection. And now, and only now, am I able to look back and see how I responded to things and those things I'm so glad the way I responded and those things that I wish I had done differently. And what you're talking about right now, that is all about, getting frustrated that, you know, Elaine would say something happened on a Friday and you're going, no, it was on a Thursday. And those kinds of small things. I think so much of that can be sifted down into the idea that we, as the caretaker for a spouse we love intently, it's a safety mechanism for us. I think it speaks to our denial. We know in our head that there's the diagnosis and we know what it says on paper and we know what the doctor, the neurologist said, but taking that information into the heart, that's a whole nother matter. And I think that an expression of that little anger and frustration, I think there's something in our brain that says, well, I say that because I really don't think that he's leaving me. Do you know what I mean? It's like setting up some kind of a false truth or a fairy tale or something like that as a coping mechanism for us. So when I think about that, and I think about what you were just describing and talking about the benefits of learning, what do you think was the hardest part for you to learn through that whole experience? For me, it was that it was real.
I think the hardest part, okay, this is in retrospect, okay?
Sure.
So I had a friend who died of a heart attack, a massive heart attack, a snap of a finger. He was very, very healthy and so forth. And so it was a tragedy, with the quickness of his death. But there was a funeral and people came by to express their sympathy and there was closure. There was closure. What happens when our loved one's mind is disappearing? They, in essence, are dying a little bit every day. And so, what our situation then is, you and I see our loved one pass away a little bit every day. And what we are going through, I believe, is a grieving process. And we are seeing this every day, and we think we have it taken care of this one day, but because the disease is so regressive, the next day is so now we start to grieve all over again. And what happens is this wears on us, but I never faced up to the fact that I have to be grieving in this process because I was losing my wife, my love, and having in the process of losing her, there of course is grieving. And so I think had I been able to understand that and better face it, I think that could have given me a type of relief that would allow me to have been more relaxed and in understanding of this uptight feeling. As I said, we've got anger and we've got frustration and we've got guilt and we've got everything going on, plus this whole business of grieving. And all of a sudden, we worry about it. We don't get enough sleep. We don't get proper exercise. We don't eat the right amount of food. And all of a sudden we become irrationally irritable. And God, I was. And so becoming irrationally irritable, I was not in a position to help the person I love so much because my makeup, my emotional and mental makeup couldn't handle it. But I want to hop back for a moment, to our loved ones sort of leaving us while they're still alive. So Elaine asked me once, how are my parents? I said, they were both dead. Oh, no, they're not. I said, Elaine, they're both dead. Well, the shock on her face when she realized she didn't say goodbye, much less attend, I promised myself I would never put her through that again. And so then the next time she asked me, how are my parents? Oh, I said, Elaine, your mom really likes working at church. She likes to volunteer and your dad likes it. Oh, she said, that makes me feel so happy. Well, that's what I call therapeutic fibbing, to join their world. And I want to mention that there's two things about therapeutic fibbing. And one of them is I tried it the first year of marriage. Doesn't work so good.
Didn't work so well, did it?
The second
Yeah.
thing about therapeutic fibbing, and not everyone believes me on this, Zita, not everyone believes me, but when Moses was taking the 10 Commandments down from Mount Sinai, I was with him and I helped him carry those tablets down. And now we're at the bottom and the front of the tablets is written in Arabic Hebrew. I didn't know, I couldn't read Arabic Hebrew, but I went around and I looked at the back of these tablets. And do you know what it said in American English? The official language now of the United States of America? What it said was therapeutic fibbing is good. Therapeutic fibbing isn't viable. Therapeutic is fibbing something is very important for you to do to help your loved one on their Alzheimer's journey. So that's what it said there. And so again, to join the world of this person who now is, and that's so difficult, isn't it, to let go of this person who once was. And again, that gets back to your question about, why do people want to not tell their loved one? Why do they want to keep it and so forth and so forth? Well, because we don't want to let go. But that's not going to create the best possible life for our loved one.
And it's not going to change the reality.
No.
I think that's one of the hardest things, is accepting that this is the reality and we need to adjust to who we are in order to make life as easy as possible for the person we love who is leaving us. I want to get in specifically to something that you talked about in your book that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. I put it under the category of manhood challenged. And you said there were statistics from 2021 that shows that in America, about 2/3 of the people who have Alzheimer's are women. And that's 3.8 million individual tragedies. So for a husband caring for a wife, how is the definition of manhood challenged and how is it changed? I say this because on one hand, we say, well, if more women have Alzheimer's, then that must mean there are more of the husbands, looking at the stereotypical man-woman relationship, but in any spousal relationship, we would think, well, then there have to be a lot of the husbands taking care of the wives, but they're not. Most of the dementia patients in nursing homes, in memory care facilities, are women because so many of the husband half of that partnership, they are either not equipped or not able, or make a list of reasons that they are not comfortable in that caregiving role. And you were in that caregiving role for a long, long time. And I'm not saying that I think everybody comes to a certain point where whatever the challenges are, because the challenges increase just dramatically, towards the end, and you need 24/7 help, you need shifts. And so we all make individual decisions. But I think we need to have more conversation about husbands caring for wives. Number one, because of the statistics, that it's going to be needed. And also because I think, and maybe I'm stereotyping here, admittedly, but I think a lot of men in our generation, for you and me, they're not prepared for that kind of family support. it's, you and I grew up in times where, yes, there were stereotypical roles of men providing and women creating the home and the hospitality and the children nurturing. And then you reach a point where now roles not even have to shift, because the one with dementia, if it's the wife, she can't take on another role. And you as the husband have to step into something you're not prepared for in most cases. And you talked in the book about how stepping into that role, asking for help, how the whole concept of asking for help was so not, it was against what your definition of like being a strong man was. And yet you reach the point where you have to for your own survival. So would you talk to me about asking for help and about how that need changed your perception of manhood? What does it mean to be a man?
Thank you for that. Genetically, my era man never changed the diaper, may not have been in the delivery room when our child was born, never really took care of a sick child, never really did anything in cleaning up after what might have been an accident by one of our children and so forth. And so call it either a charmed life or call it a life misspent, but we grew up not even grasping the understanding of what it's like to give somebody a bath or a shower. And so there's that awkward situation. But then also we get to the fact where we think that to ask for help is the cowardly about it. But when I give my talks now, I try and stress the fact that to ask for help means you're not giving up. To ask for help is a sign of courage. And I want to stress that to ask for help means you're not giving up. As long as I tried to do things by myself, my gosh, my whole health and my whole attitude and my whole outlook on life was so dismal and unfortunate for Elaine, because I was a lousy, bad, very bad caregiver. But once you understand just a little bit about the fact that it's a tough thing, and no one should be afraid to ask for help. No one should be afraid to say, I'm not giving up, and we're going to make sure that we do this together. And I want to make sure that that's driven home in people's minds, that to ask for help means you're not giving up. To ask for help is a sign of courage. And so I use the analogy, if we assume that we're surrounded by an enemy and we can't, it's just absolutely hopeless, it's going to be the end. Are we just going to sit there and have ourselves be annihilated, or are we going to call for help? Are we going to call for assistance? And so you and I go back, we talked right from the very beginning, and your experience the same, but I go back with Elaine 22 years now. Alzheimer's could not be cured or prevented. Now today, Alzheimer's cannot be cured or prevented. And that is an absolutely ugly, dire prognosis. But what we can do is we can make the determination, which is doable, to help our loved one live their best life possible. We can do that. How do we do that? Well, one of the ways is to join their world. But another way of helping our loved one live their best life possible is to take care of ourselves. Because again, I want to stress to you men out there, or any caregiver, if your mind is mixed up, and if you're overtired, and if you're irrationally irritable, if you are lacking of sleep, if you have all of these emotions going on, it's impossible for you to have help, for you to help have your loved one live their best life possible, because you've got to take care of yourself. And again, I want to get to the point, an Alzheimer's diagnosis is horrible and nothing we can do about it. But what we can do is help our loved one live their best possible life. That's doable. And for that, we can step back and say, yes, it was an ugly disease, but I accomplished something. I helped my loved one live their best life possible. How did I do that? Well, not only joining their world, but taking care of myself. So I have the strength, both physically and emotionally, psychologically, that I have that strength to help my wife through this, but then to maintain my survival so I can be a grandfather, I can be a friend, I can be a brother, and so on. And so there is just so much to live for, so much that is ingrained, so much of the fabric woven into how good, better things can be if the caregiver simply takes care of themselves.
Um, I think that I don't know if you realize how many pearls of wisdom that you are stringing together in this interview, and I know that they're in your book, My Two Elaines. I'm very glad you're doing this. I think that sharing our stories like this is one of the ways that we, as the dementia spousal caregivers, it's one of the ways that we can take the pain, the regret, all that we experienced, and we become alchemists, and we turn all of that pain into some kind of gold that helps us, but even more importantly, it helps other people. In the last couple of minutes that we have, Marty, I want to ask something about the book, because as I said earlier, a lot of the people who watch the show are writers. I know that you initially self-published the book, and then it was picked up by HarperCollins. We share that. They published my 3 historical romance novels. So there's a little connection there that I didn't even know about. And that hardcover book was released in 2022. And I know that Elaine died in 2022. My husband died in 2022. We have that in common as well. So I want to know, how did you, I'm not sure celebrate is the right word, but acknowledge. How did you acknowledge the publication of the book by Harper when all of that happened in the same year that was this ultimate grieving?
Well, it helped my grieving process. To go through all of this, as you know, is so painful. But to think that there might be some good coming out of it, and the good coming out of it for me was to be able to have this journey, gone on this journey, and then say, okay, now to a future caregiver, you're going to be taking the same journey, but please sit down and listen and just let me share with you what's in store so I can help you. From that, I took my strength. And from that, it helped relieve the grieving. And from that, it gave me more appreciation of Elaine and what she went through, more appreciation of what it was like when she was healthy. And so I felt so pleased when Harper picked up that book, because it meant it was going nationwide and other people were going to be able to gain from it.
I'm so glad. It's so funny how our journeys wind up sometime. And I'm afraid, Marty, that unfortunately we are out of time. So I do want to thank you again very much. And for the viewing audience, the book is My Two Elaines, and the author is Martin Schreiber. Marty, to us here today, a fellow caregiver. Marty, thanks very much for sharing your story on here today.
I am grateful. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're most welcome. And I love to close this show, page 1, because it's about writing, with the words of the late fantasy writer, Ursula Le Guin, who said, "There have been civilizations that did not use the wheel, but there have been no civilizations that did not tell stories." So find your story, find a way to tell it. Maybe that's through a memoir, and join me again next time. Thank you. My husband is a gentleman, a handsome, honest, hardworking, romantic man, 8 years my senior. Our 40th wedding anniversary was last summer. We didn't celebrate. He doesn't know who I am.